This video is produced for informational and analytical purposes only. All analysis represents the opinion of this channel and does not constitute established fact. No individual is accused of any crime. If you have information about Nancy Guthrie, please contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI Phoenix Field Office. Brian Entin has been on the ground in Tucson longer than any other national reporter covering this case. 4 hours and 22 minutes. That is the gap in the public record of the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared. The gap between the last confirmed peaceful moment, her arriving home, and the first confirmed evidence of what was happening to her. The national media has been focused almost entirely on the end of that gap, the masked figure captured on the doorbell camera at 2:12 in the morning. That image, the gloved hand, the backpack, the deliberate tampering with the lens, has become the visual centerpiece of everything the public knows about this case. But the gap itself, 4 hours and 22 minutes of the night with almost no public discussion, is where the actual story of what happened to Nancy Guthrie lives. And right at the beginning of that gap, confirmed, documented, verified across multiple mainstream outlets sourcing directly from the official law enforcement timeline, is a detail that the national media has accepted without question and almost never analyzed. 9:48 p.m. Nancy arrives home. The garage door opens. 9:50 p.m. 2 minutes later, the garage door closes. 2 minutes. The assumption the media has allowed to stand is that Nancy came home, triggered the garage opener, walked inside, and the door closed behind her. She arrived, she went in, full stop. But Brian Entin flew a drone over that property on day 59, and a retired Pima County homicide detective watched that footage. And what he identified, in the professional language of someone who spent his career reconstructing exactly these kinds of scenes, is a detail that changes how you understand everything about that night. Stay with me. Quick sourcing note before we go in. All named individuals are identified by name, credential, and source throughout. Statements attributed to the anonymous law enforcement insider are explicitly labeled as single source, unconfirmed claims, exactly as they appear in Brian Entin's News Nation reporting. No individual in this video is named or implied as a suspect in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. All analysis is analytical opinion, not confirmed investigative fact. Those are the standards. Let's go. Before we go into the garage and the timeline and the drone footage, I need to stop for a moment. Because behind every timestamp in this video, behind 9:48 and 9:50 and 1:47 and 2:12, there is a person. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is a mother, a grandmother, a woman who went to dinner with her family on January 31st, came home, and was taken in the night. A woman whose family is still waiting, whose church community is still praying, who should be home. If you are a person of faith, please say a prayer for Nancy Guthrie right now. Pray that she is found. Pray that whoever knows something finds the courage to speak before more time passes. And if prayer is not your practice, hold her in your thoughts, because every detail we examine in this video exists for one reason: to help bring her home.
I want to speak to you directly for a moment. People are watching this right now from across the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, and around the world. True crime communities on 3 continents are following every development in this investigation, and the only reason this analysis reaches any of them is because of viewers like you. This channel has almost no subscribers. We are building from nothing, one case, one video at a time. And I want to be honest with you. If you are watching this and you care about getting the full story on Nancy Guthrie, please subscribe right now. Hit the like button. Those 5 seconds tell the algorithm that this content matters, and the algorithm pushes it to more people. More people means more eyes on this case. Drop a comment. Stay for the question at the end of this video. I genuinely want your answer. Now, let's talk about the reporter who flew the drone. Brian Entin is a senior national correspondent for News Nation. He has been embedded in Tucson on this case since the earliest weeks of the investigation. And the word embedded is not rhetorical. He has been there physically, on the ground, building relationships with neighbors, sources, and local contacts in a way that is qualitatively different from reporting done by phone or satellite from a newsroom desk. When you are present in a community over weeks, you earn access that remote reporters simply cannot get. You learn the neighborhood, you understand the geography, you develop relationships that produce information that would never come through a formal press inquiry. Entin has walked the street where Nancy lived. He has stood in that neighborhood at night, in the dark, no streetlights, just the desert and the mountains, and understood firsthand what that environment looks like for someone moving through it without wanting to be seen. He has spoken to neighbors that nobody else has gotten on camera. He has reported on law enforcement source material that no other national outlet has accessed. And he has done something no other national correspondent has managed on this case at this level of detail. He flew a drone over Nancy's property. A drone gives you something ground-level images cannot. It gives you the complete overhead picture, the spatial architecture of the scene. You see how the garage relates to the rear entrance. You see the paths between structures. You see the lines of sight, what is visible from one position, what is completely blocked from view at another. You see the approach paths and the blind spots.
When an investigator watches drone footage of a crime scene, they are not seeing a real estate photograph. They are seeing an overhead map of a crime. They see investigative markers. They see the evidence of what other investigators were doing when they worked that ground before the drone was ever in the air. Kurt Dabb watched that footage, and in about 60 seconds, I am going to tell you what he identified when he did, specifically around the garage. It is the detail that reframes the entire 4-hour and 22-minute gap. Stay with me. Kurt Dabb is not a television commentator who has studied this case from a distance and formed opinions about it. He is a retired Pima County homicide detective. That means he spent years of his professional career investigating violent crime in the same jurisdiction, the same geographic and institutional environment where Nancy Guthrie disappeared. He knows how Pima County investigators think. He knows the physical landscape of the foothills. He knows the terrain, and he knows from direct personal experience exactly what specific investigative techniques look like when they are being executed in the field, because he was the one executing them. In his on-the-record interview with Entin during the Day 59 coverage, Dabb made several substantive statements that are named, verified, and on the record. He stated his professional belief that Nancy's abduction was not a crime of opportunity. In his own words, this was a well-planned and well-executed operation, coordinated, pre-planned, and targeted. He said it is more than likely the home was canvassed prior to the night of the crime, either by the primary actor or by an accomplice. Someone knew that property before January 31st. Someone had been there or sent someone there to understand the layout, the approaches, the camera positions, the blind spots, the timing windows. He stated his belief that multiple individuals were involved, giving a specific range of 2 to 4 accomplices. His reasoning, the logistics of removing an 84-year-old woman from her home, managing the scene so that no interior chaos is left behind, and executing a clean exit through a residential neighborhood without detection, that is too complex for a single individual. Too many variables to control simultaneously, too much ground to cover at the same time. He addressed the interior condition of the home, the detail confirmed by Entin's law enforcement source, that the inside showed no visible signs of an assault. Rooms were in orderly condition, no disarray. Dabb called this, in his words, just a little bit weird, and then he immediately reframed it in exactly the way a homicide detective would. These individuals had a plan. They carried it to fruition. The absence of chaos inside is not evidence that nothing happened there. It is evidence of how organized the operation was. And then Dabb watched Entin's drone footage, and he saw something the rest of us were not trained to see. What Dabb identified in that drone footage, the specific technique he recognized being executed at specific locations around Nancy's property, including the garage area, is called a perspective shot. A perspective shot is a photograph taken from a specific location to document what a person standing at that position would have been able to see at the time of the crime. It is not documentation of the scene as it currently exists. It is the recreation of a point of view.
Investigators position their camera at the exact height and angle that a specific individual would have occupied. At a corner of a structure, at a point along a driveway, at a doorway, at the entrance to a garage, and they photographed the sightline. What was visible from here? What was blocked from here? Could a person at this position see the vehicle pulling into the driveway? Could they see the front entrance? Could they observe the approach without themselves being observed? Perspective shots are not part of routine scene documentation. Routine documentation photographs what is there. Perspective shots recreate what was seen. And that distinction matters enormously, because perspective shots are taken only when investigators have already formed a theory about where a specific individual was positioned at a specific moment in time. This technique is not exploratory, it is confirmatory. It is building the evidentiary record to support a reconstruction that investigators have already begun developing. When Dabb looked at Entin's drone footage and identified indicators consistent with perspective shots being taken at specific locations around Nancy's property, including the area around the garage, he was reading, in the professional language of homicide investigation, that investigators had a theory. They believed they knew where someone was standing, and they were documenting it. Perspective shots at the garage area would be answering a very specific question. What could someone standing here see when Nancy's vehicle pulled into this driveway at 9:48 p.m.? What was their sight line? What was the path from this position to the interior of the home? What does the physical evidence in and around this space tell us about who was here and when? Those are investigative questions. They have answers. The investigators have them. The public record does not. I need to pause here because this is where I ask for your help. If you are still with me at this point, you are the core audience this channel was built for. You want the full picture, not just headlines. Please hit subscribe right now. Hit like on this video. Those two actions tell YouTube this investigation deserves more reach. This channel has almost no subscribers. Every single person who subscribes is what keeps this work going. And stay for the garage question at the end, because that is the one I genuinely want to hear your answer to. Now, let's talk about what happened at 9:48 p.m.
Let me walk the official timeline precisely, because when you see every confirmed data point in sequence, the garage question becomes impossible to avoid. Saturday, January 31st, 2026. At 5:32 in the afternoon, Nancy Guthrie left her home and traveled to a family dinner at her daughter Annie's house. By all accounts, a normal evening. No visible indication that anything was wrong. She had plans for the following morning, a scheduled church live stream she would never appear for. At 9:48 p.m., Nancy was dropped off at her home by a family member. Tommaso Cian was the last known person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. At 9:48 p.m., the garage door opened. At 9:50 p.m., 2 minutes later, the garage door closed. Both timestamps are confirmed by law enforcement and documented across multiple mainstream outlets sourcing directly from the official timeline. The Associated Press, ABC 15, Newsweek, The Washington Times. This is not a single-source claim. This is the confirmed, multi-sourced official record. Then the public timeline goes dark for more than 3.5 hours. At 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, the doorbell camera disconnected, confirmed by law enforcement. At 2:12 a.m., the camera software detected movement at the front of the home. The masked figure, armed, gloved, wearing the distinctive black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack, tampering with the camera, covering the lens with the nearby shrubbery. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker application lost contact with her phone, the last confirmed trace of her presence inside that home. The masked figure at 2:12 a.m. is the visual centerpiece of this case in the media. It is what gets replayed, analyzed, discussed. It is the image the public understanding of this case is built around. But that frame leaves 4 hours and 22 minutes unaddressed. From the moment the garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. to the moment the camera detected movement at 2:12 a.m. That is the dark interval in the public record, and the garage sits right at the beginning of it. Here is the question, stated precisely because precision matters. The surface interpretation of that 9:48 garage sequence is that Nancy came home, triggered the garage opener, walked inside, and the door closed behind her. That is the interpretation the national media has accepted without further examination. But that interpretation does not account for what DAB recognized in the drone footage. It does not account for the repeated investigative returns to that specific area of the property. And it does not account for the question that a retired homicide detective who spent his career reconstructing exactly these kinds of scenes is sitting with when he looks at that evidence. Was someone already inside when Nancy arrived?
I want to be precise. This is investigative analysis, not confirmed fact. What happened in that 2-minute window has not been stated publicly by law enforcement. What investigators found when they processed the garage has not been released. We are not saying someone was inside. We are saying the evidence picture, the confirmed evidence picture, raises a question that the public record has not answered. DAB has said on the record that this operation required 2 to 4 individuals. He has said the home was canvassed before the crime. He has said the individuals carried their plan to fruition with enough precision to leave the interior immaculate. No chaos, no disarray, no visible evidence of a struggle inside the home. Think about what a coordinated, pre-planned abduction from a private residence actually looks like operationally. The masked figure at 2:12 a.m. is a late-stage element of this operation. It is either active entry or scene management following an earlier event. The individuals who planned and surveilled and prepared this operation would not all arrive at 2:12 in the morning. They would arrive earlier when the neighborhood was quiet, when the timing window was right, when they could move into position without being seen. The garage door opened at 9:48. Nancy arrived at 9:48. The garage door closed at 9:50. 2 minutes. If someone was positioned inside or at the rear of that property when Nancy came home, staged at the garage, at the back entrance, anywhere along the path from the garage into the interior, the 2-minute sequence of door opens, brief interval, door closes is not simply an arrival sequence. It is the moment the planned operation moved from preparation to contact. That is the theory that perspective shots at the garage area are built to document. That is the reconstruction DAB recognized from the drone footage. That is what a career homicide detective sees when he identifies investigators taking position-specific photographs at a particular location on a crime scene, and the location is the garage. Let us be honest about where this stands. Nancy Guthrie has been missing since February 1, 2026.
The investigation is active. The FBI is involved. No arrest has been made. No suspect has been publicly named. Investigators have returned to that property multiple times. Fox News drone footage captured a person on a ladder with a drill working on the rear wall of the residence. Not routine scene photography, physical investigative work. Entin's drone footage captured the property during a period of active investigation, and DAB identified from above the evidence of perspective shots being taken at specific locations around that property, including the garage area. The garage is not a footnote in this case. It may be where this case begins. What happened in that 2-minute window? What was found when investigators processed that space? What do the perspective shots document? What does the completed reconstruction of that area tell law enforcement about the beginning of that night? These are answerable questions. The answers exist inside the investigative record. The public conversation around this case should be pressing for them. If you have any information, any detail, any memory, any name, anything you saw near that neighborhood on the night of January 31st, 2026, please call the Pima County Sheriff tip line at 520-351-4900 or the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or tips.fbi.gov. The reward pool is over $1.2 million. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. She had a life, a family, a church community that is still praying for her. She is not forgotten here, and this channel is not going anywhere until there is an answer. Here is the question I want you to answer in the comments below. The garage door opened for 2 minutes when Nancy came home. The national media accepted that as an arrival sequence and moved on. What do you think happened in that window? And what do you think investigators are documenting when they return to that property and take perspective shots at the garage area? Tell me, because this community has identified details before and made it into the investigative conversation. That matters. Stay on it. Before you go, I'm asking for 3 things. 1. Subscribe to Evidence True Crime right now. 2. Like this video. 3. Drop your answer to the garage question in the comments. This channel has almost no subscribers. Every single one matters. Every like tells YouTube this investigation
Perspective shots at the garage area would be answering a specific question. What could someone standing here see when Nancy's vehicle pulled into this driveway at 9:48 p.m.? What was their sight line? What was the path from this position to the interior of the home? And what does the physical evidence in and around this space tell us about who was here and when? Those questions have answers. The investigators have them.